Let's take a deeper look at shadows in Mental Ray. First, we need to understand the pros and cons of the various shadow types. You've got three options in Mental Ray for your shadows. You've got Ray Traced, Shadow Map, and Mental Ray Shadow Map. So I'm going to select my light here, and so far we've looked at Ray Traced shadows. We can choose different types here, and we want to talk a little bit about the pros and cons of each. You'll note that there are 5 different types of shadows here. The only ones that are relevant to Mental Ray are Ray Traced, Shadow Map, and Mental Ray Shadow Map. The others will just be converted to Ray Trace shadows if you try to select them. Okay, so Ray Trace shadows. What do those do? A Ray Trace shadow is vector-based, which means that from the point of view of a light, lines are drawn out to determine whether a surface is going to block the light or not. In the case of the lampshade, if we drew a line straight up, then the light would not be blocked and there would be no shadow there. If we drew a line out to the side, the light would be blocked by the lampshade and we would get a shadow on the wall. So that means that these shadows are resolution independent and you won't get any aliasing or jagged edges on the shadows. You'll also be able to get the benefits of soft shadows if you have a non-point shadow shape, anything except a point, and you will get soft shadows. And also, transparency is respected by ray trace shadows. So if you have a transparent material, you'll get transparent shadows. Ray tracing is the easiest one to set up because you don't have to fuss with any parameters. But the downside is you get longer render times. So if you have a lot of lights in your scene, you should use ray trace shadows sparingly, if at all. So what are the alternatives? Well, you've got Shadow Map. And a Shadow Map shadow is pixel-based rather than vector-based. So the way it works is it creates an image of the shadow and projects it onto surfaces. And so if you're not careful, your shadow maps can exhibit aliasing or jagged edges. We'll take a look at that in a later video. But they are much faster to render than ray trace shadows. The downside of these standard shadow maps is that they do not respect transparency. So if I wanted a translucent lampshade, I would still get solid black shadows on the wall. There is another alternative, which is the Mental Ray Shadow Map. Mental Ray Shadow Maps are a fancier version of standard shadow maps, which does respect transparency. So that's really the only difference between the standard shadow map and the MR shadow map, is that MR shadow maps behave exactly the same pretty much, except that they do respect transparency. So those are your 3 options: Ray Traced, Shadow Map, and MR Shadow Map. And just to recap, Ray Traced shadows will give you soft shadows, will give you transparent shadows, and will not give you jagged edges. They're easy to set up, but they take longer to render. Shadow maps, you'll have to tweak on them a little bit to get them to look good, but they'll render much more quickly. Standard shadow maps do not support transparency, and MR shadow maps do. Next, we're going to look at how to control shadows on a per object basis so we can tell an object to cast shadows or not.